Good morning, everyone. So let's have a seat. I'm going to make a quick presentation of the panel. Thank you, everyone, for coming today, and thank you, Enrique Perret and the North Capital Forum for the opportunity to talk to you today. We have a really good panel. The panel is called Pure Nearshore Manufacturing and Industrial Real Estate. We have with me Anwar Barake from Emerson Electric. We have the Secretary for Economy at Querétaro. Welcome. We have Adriana Eguía, and we have Jorge González from the Nearshore company. Adriana from Vesta. Sorry for that. Okay. So basically, I'm going to make a quick introduction on the field and how we are feeling in this controversial context, I would say. And then I'm going to pass the floor with some questions to the speakers. And then if we have time at the end, we can have a quick Q&A, okay? So basically, when we explore how shifting supply chains are reshaping North American industrial landscape, we have to put Mexico in perspective. Basically, we are feeling that Mexico, in relative way, is better than the rest of the world. I think the world is having a lot of different troubles, personality problems in Europe, immigration, a conservative right is coming in Europe with a great effort in some countries. We have a war in Russia and Ukraine. We have a war in the Middle East. The most aggressive Chinese stimulus that we have seen in 15 years. 2024 is the biggest democratic election process that we have seen in history. Climate change, highly contagious mpox spreading across Congo, elections in the US and Mexico, and huge import tariffs for Chinese electric vehicles in both in Europe and in the US. So we feel that North America has a unique opportunity to build bridges and to make a more cohesive economy than anything part of the world that we have seen right now. We have some challenges. We have to build infrastructure. We have to build and make really good effort to tackle immigration. We have security troubles in Mexico. So this is the kind of things that we are feeling. This is Ricardo Fernández. I'm the head for commercial banking and government affairs for BBVA in Mexico. So basically, I'm going to pass the floor to the people in the panel so we can have a more cohesive dialogue on how the things are going on in Mexico at the moment. So Anwar Barake, expanding industrial real estate, how does Emerson access the industrial real estate landscape in Mexico for further expansion, and what opportunities do you see for collaboration with Mexican real estate developers on the government?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. First of all, let me give some background into Emerson Electric. Emerson Electric, it's a leading automation supplier. We've been in Mexico for 65 years. We find Mexico as, Mexico for us is very strategic, not only for the size of the automation market, but the fact that we have 10% of our manufacturing facilities here. We have 6,300 employees. We source 40% of what we produce. We source it here. It's taken us about 25 years to develop a very solid supply chain, and we want to take that directionally to about 50%. So initially, to respond, initially we located in the border cities, but due to security reasons, we have relocated some of our facilities. But we still have Mexicali, we have Chihuahua, Monterrey, Saltillo, Toluca, Metepec, but we find that most of the variables that we look at is, initially we looked at infrastructure, but now we look deeply into demographics, and we have our real estate advisors that help us with that. And the fact that we look at demographics is because it affects our productivity, depending on the turnover rate, the availability of skilled force. Going forward, we are currently expanding one manufacturing location in Chihuahua. We're adding 400,000 square feet, an investment of $200 million. But what we find is that we can leverage the management teams in the current locations, and that helps us a great deal. So when you ask a president from any of the business groups, where do they want to expand, they feel very comfortable with Mexico because of the fact that we've been here for 65 years. The fact that we have one of the world's best manufacturing sites here in terms of quality, productivity, safety, so Mexico is a true partner for us. It's been a true partner, and it will continue to be so.
Thank you, Anwar. Just for the sake of clarity, is the constitutional reform going to affect your plans in the near future?
We need to wait and see what the implementation is, because one of the things is the constitutional reform, what has been announced, but we have to wait and see how it gets implemented.
Okay, thank you. Secretary, I'm going to pass the floor to you. State efforts for nearshoring opportunities. The state of Querétaro has an important aeronautic and automotive production centers. What actions must the state governments implement to attract investment and become key investment hubs for foreign direct investment?
Yes, thank you very much, and it's a pleasure to meet all of you here at this panel. Thank you, Enrique Perret, for inviting us at North Capital Forum. Well, the state of Querétaro, and I believe I'm president of the Mexican Association of Economic Development Secretaries, and we have been speaking a lot or talking a lot about what we have to do to attract more investment or nearshoring investment to our states or to Mexico. And we believe the first thing that's very important for everybody, it's rule of law. We need to guarantee our investors that their investment should have a low risk regarding rule of law. And that's obtained by clarity in the processes. Right now, we are experiencing a lot of uncertainty in some importation processes that are affecting our current production lines in many manufacturing states. So that the first thing that international investors and even Mexican investors are looking for is to have clarity and certainty in the process. Rule of law is one of them. Obviously, security. Anwar was talking about why they should have relocated some facilities because of security, and finally the capability of the state to provide talent through education, through training, through innovation and technology, so we can, Mexico as a whole, achieve what the industry right now is looking forward. We have been observing that manufacturing, it's a big part of our economies, especially in central Mexico, Querétaro, Aguascalientes. I greet my colleague from Aguascalientes, Saúl. It's a pleasure to see you here again. But especially in central Mexico, Guanajuato, San Luis Potosí, and even some parts of the northern part of Mexico, manufacturing is evolving. And it's evolving to advanced manufacturing, to more robotics, to more energy consumption, to processes that are looking for it to be cleaner processes that use cleaner energies. And that's where the states have to put their eyes on how to create talent or to promote talent to achieve the requirements of these new technologies that are arriving to our manufacturing ecosystem. So in some, it should be obviously rule of law, legal certainty, and that includes clarity in the processes, but also security, talent, and infrastructure. That it's a huge part of the equation. If we don't have available industrial infrastructure for installing the new facilities, if we don't have energy, whatever the origin is, we would love to have more clean energy, and we are very grateful that President Sheinbaum has put the eye on renewable energies, but energy at least to have enough energy, and talent, and finally suppliers. But I will talk to that in further participation.
Thank you, Secretary. One more question to you. One of the things that we are facing at BBVA is trying to build bridges with new government, both locally and centrally, I would say. In this context, how do you think private investment could help and mix with your efforts on the States? How would be just one measure? Give me one measure on how we could help you the most. You didn't say it, but the state of Querétaro is one of the most healthy financial states in Mexico, so congratulations for that. But again, can you give us one measure that we can help you on infrastructure? Well,
The first is access to financing. It's very complicated for some suppliers to get financing their projects. They may have the contact, they may have the contract, but they don't have financing for. So I believe all the financial systems should be more open to bet a little bit on the risk of financing production projects, because it's part of a vicious circle in which we have the project, we have the client, but we don't have the money to invest on working capital or raw materials or whatever it takes. But maybe the first thing that I feel is ease of the procedure of financing.
One key thing for that is, I think development banks in Mexico should work even harder in certain risks. So passing you the floor, Adriana. Vesta, one of the best developers that we have in Mexico, industrial real estate, publicly trading company in the US. Adriana, industrial real estate. Vesta works with many international clients seeking industrial facilities in Mexico. What has made Mexico and North America such a unique and competitive region for investment, and how we can ensure that economic competitiveness continues to grow?
Thank you. Adriana Eguía, Vice President for Vesta for the Northwestern Mexico, representing Norteños. I've seen a couple of faces here. Our company has been in the market for more than 30 years. Most of our strategy has been placing our industrial pockets in strategic cities as of Tijuana, Monterrey, Chihuahua, Ciudad Juárez, Guadalajara. And I think most of the developers, what are doing, and it's part of our strategy that most of the fibras and companies like us do, is we diversify portfolios. We've been very conscious of what is each of the states' vocation. So we know, for example, in Baja California, we're not going to be bringing automotive industries because we know that state is not what they're going to be doing, right? It's mostly medical devices. Some of the aerospace industry is also strong, very strong there, of course, electronics. And most of the northern states also kind of shift into those industries. So we are betting in having those industries being fostered in most of the developers, by also bringing the best kind of developments. And one of the things that I think developers are really conscious about is infrastructure in our country. Even though things have been lacking in terms of the electric industry, and we know that water is kind of lacking too, we are skinning the game. we're betting in putting our money into the electric infrastructure, trying to bring these companies in and trying to feel them safe that their investment is going to actually shift and just going to expand into our countries. Other things that we've been doing is most of our staff and most of the people that are in these industries are really into relations with the government. We do allies with most of the pure players of the ecosystem. So just giving you a very simple example of our economy. We're in the Cali-Baja region, and we play transversely and vertically with most of them. And so we were trying to make all of the efforts and most of the people actually being responsible of all of the things that are going to be happening in these economies. So I think Vesta is very conscious of what our country is going to give in the long run. We're here for the long run, and that's why we think even though there's going to be shifts in the economy, and we know that this year has been really going all over, and we didn't thought that it's going to come where we are right now in October, we're still thinking we're here to play the game with everyone. We're not going to be moving, and that's why we're telling our companies to do as well. So this is moving forward what we're still going to do.
Thank you, Adriana. One more question to you. Today, the regulation allows that you can put or generate 0.5 megawatts per project. Do you think that growing that to 5 megawatts per project is going to be enough for the industries that are coming or trying to come to Mexico? Or do you think it should be higher?
So we've been talking to people from CFE, and we know that it's going to be a long-term wait. What most of the companies have been doing, like us, is investing as privates into the infrastructure. We know that that's probably going to move the prices higher. So just giving you an example, we just built a substation in one of our parks in Tijuana. It cost us $8 million. And instead of the companies buying the KVAs at $120 per KVA, they're going to be buying it at $450, $500. But the thing is, we need to give them certainty that they're going to be having the service instead of just trespassing the responsibility only to the government. So this is mostly what most of the companies been waiting for. Having an actual responsibility, giving them a plug-and-play solution. So, I mean, just coming back to your question, the answer is we don't know, even though it's still in the plans. But since we don't know, we're not certain that that's going to happen, we need to be proactive and invest ourselves.
At least from the information that we have from the bank, it looks like this is something that is going to be at least discussed. So I think they have it very clear that they have to increase that 0.5 to something more between 3 and 5. So hopefully that happens. Jorge, González, the Nearshore company. The Nearshore company has supported the arrival of foreign companies to Mexico for more than 30 years. What would you say is different this time, given that the region has further integrated and the current geopolitical scenario with China? What do you think is different right now?
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. First, I want to say that we're an old company, 32 years in the market, with a new name. We were talking about the name, Anwar, that we rebranded during the pandemic. And everybody likes to say, well, you guys were visionaries, and we were actually very lucky. There was zero vision, in fact, because when the marketing agency recommended the Nearshore company, everybody, including the board, was saying, well, that sounds a lot like IT. You know? You're like back office IT, that's nearshoring. It's not used in manufacturing yet. And we were like, well, we're not the experts. These guys are, they're suggesting this, let's do it. You know? So we did it, and thank God we did it, because now the name of our company really allows us to come in the first page of the Google searches. And we go to trade shows, and they look at our name and like, I read this everywhere. Can you please explain what nearshoring is? So it's we were very lucky, and I think It's always better to be lucky than smart, as they say. One thing that I would like to clear is that I get a lot of questions when we give these talks about, well, is nearshoring really happening, you know? And I say, well, I don't know, but I'm feeling it a lot. No? I mean, since 2019 to today, we have doubled the size of our company. We now have 17 facilities in Mexico, and a warehouse in Texas, and the phone doesn't stop ringing. Right? So there's definitely something going on. I know there's this FDI data discussion, and nearshoring is not equally distributed in the country. And so I get all those conversations are worth having, but what we're seeing in the northeast of Mexico is a strong tailwind. We're very focused in Matamoros, Nuevo Laredo, Monterrey, San Luis Potosí, and you can see it, you can feel it, right? So either we are delusional or something is kind of confusing. And I would like to say that it's more on the confusing part, because I think addressing your question now, I think we are in a very unique situation, and probably everybody says that, right? When you're having a historical moment, and we don't really even understand it. I think right now, I think that the conversations yesterday were very interesting. Geopolitics with Minovi yesterday, and he talks about this uncertainty, global uncertainty. And I think we're in a very unique situation, as I said. When the company was founded in 1992, that's 2 years before NAFTA. No? So, as you can imagine, when NAFTA was signed, was a boom for the company. No? And if you asked the managers at that time, it wasn't myself, they would have told you, well, this is a once in a lifetime, this is a unique opportunity we have, we're signing NAFTA, no? And this is the same thing that I would tell you right now. I mean, we are in another unique opportunity. Again, I remember I was in graduate school during the 2008 housing crisis, and I do remember that even my professors didn't know what was going on. I mean, we would walk into the classrooms and everyone was like, we don't know what, the world is melting, the world, like, some people were optimistic, some people were more pessimistic. When you look back, it's like, oh, it's pretty obvious, the housing boom. But when you're in the process, you don't have that visibility, and I think that's happening right now. As in every situation, I think there's positives and there's negatives. I think on the positive side, and again, coming back to the question, Mexico is now a manufacturing country. You know, in the 80s, we were an oil-dependent economy. And I think that's very different. We have 12 FTAs plus NAFTA. We have 3 generations of Maquila employees now in many cities, especially the border. So I think Mexico is much better prepared today than what it was in 1992 when the Nearshore company was founded. But at the same time, coming back to another unique situation, and we talked about it, or Minovi talked about it last night a lot. The senator during dinner mentioned this, and Harry Krensky was also talking about this during the lunch. This is a window that is opening for us right now, and we need to see how to take advantage of it, even with all this uncertainty. No? And the window for me opened because of the China-US decoupling that everybody's talking about. That is a reality, and that's not going to change. And so now we get a lot of the calls that we get from companies, and not only US, but European, Chinese, Canadian. The geopolitical question comes up very, very early in the discussion. You know, like, hey, we don't know what's going to happen. We have facilities in China, and to help me to understand Mexico. No, and so again, I think it's very unique. I think it's going to be full of hiccups. I like to make the comparison that when you look at stock equity returns, let's say in the US market for the last 100 years, and you're far away, you see a graph that it's trending upwards in one direction. It looks amazing, right? But when you get very close, you zoom in, there's all these valleys, and it's very irregular. And that's how I see this nearshoring process. I mean, you mentioned that it took you 25 years to set up your supply chain. I think that is the most critical issue we face now when we're talking to companies. I mean, strangely enough, even more than the risk of the current government and the judicial reform, I think they're saying, oh my God, China has been the factory of the world. I mean, and think about that, because we say it very trivially. I mean, there's trillions of dollars invested in China. They are very good at what they do. And now we want to pull out, and we want to replicate that in Mexico. And Mexico was not even expecting this, honestly. I mean, of course, we're like, wait a minute, like I'm drowning in this tsunami, no? It's a positive tsunami, but we're definitely drowning. And so there's infrastructure issues, electricity, water, all that, and I think everybody's kind of like, let's move fast. But I want to finish with this question with one comment. And Harry Krensky said it during the lunch yesterday. The floor is very high, right? So we're very bullish on nearshoring. The phone doesn't stop ringing, as I said. The demographics in the U.S. is a problem. There are labor shortages in the U.S., and it's not going to change. Immigration is a very delicate issue in the U.S., so it's not going to fix that. And then other things that we think are not going to change that are structural. So that's very good for Mexico, but we are not alone. You know, we talked to some companies that we cannot reach an agreement, and they go to Southeast Asia, right? And they go to India. So we have to understand Mexico that we're competing, and instead of talking of the floor, instead of talking of downside risk, because it's going to be good for Mexico, we should be talking of how far this can go, right? I think it would be great if we would be talking about, can we make this at 10 instead of from 1 to 10, make it a 10? What do we need to do to make it a 10? And I think the conversation now is, well, let's just not go below 5. No? And I think it's a very different mindset.
One more question to you, Jorge. Thank you. When you see the foreign direct investment in Mexico, it's not changing greatly. However, when you see it in Texas, it looks like we are competing with Texas. So I think they are talking about reshoring, and we are talking about in Mexico about nearshoring. So it looks like this window is not completely open for the moment. How do you think, or can you give us 2, 3 things that the Mexican government should do so we can get all the foreign, or as much as foreign direct investment as we are able to get when we are competing with Texas right now? So 2, 3 advices.
Sure. Well, I'll start by saying that Texas is a formidable place to do business. They have done a lot of things right, and they're also, again, very lucky. They're sitting on so much oil that they can't even know what to do with it. So again, luck is a big part of it. Geography is a bit luck. A lot of that. There's a lot of land. There's a lot of young people. I mean, Texas has a lot going its way. If I'll make a commercial here, but for the people that were here last year, Peter Zayan, which is also a geopolitician, he continually says that for him, the future of manufacturing is actually a region which is made of Texas and northern Mexico. So if you could circle that cross-border region, for him that's like I think he even says it's a manufacturing renaissance it's going to happen. So it sounds very, very romantic, right? But that gives you an idea of the power in that region for manufacturing, right? So it's a formidable competitor. When we talk to a lot of, especially U.S. companies that want to reshore, that's their first option, and I can understand it, you know, because it's not easy to be moving from one country to another. So when you talk to U.S. companies, they tell you, you know, my first plan is to reshore, but you know, when I do the math, Like it's impossible. I can't even find the workers, and it's so expensive. So now I'm sort of, quote unquote, forced to look at Mexico. So that's unfortunately how the conversation starts. And in with those mindsets, it's where Texas is a threat to Mexico, because Texas has a lot of advantages economically, and you're still in the US. But Mexico, I think, if we can offer stability, I think that's everything. That's all that these companies want. They want predictability, right? I want to plan. So for example, these 5 years, the minimum wage has increased on the border so much that when I talk to my clients, they're like, I understand that the country wants to do good for its workers, and I understand it, but please let us know. I mean, we cannot plan. I mean, you tell us on December 25th that it's going up of 25%. Like, our budgets are crazy now. And I think stability and certainty is what these companies want.
Thank you, Jorge. Now I'm going to throw the same question to everyone in the panel, starting with you, Secretary. What are your plans for expanding your operations in Mexico over the next few years? I would say in the state of Querétaro. How does the nearshoring fit on your future strategy in Querétaro?
Well, we have been experiencing a lot of nearshoring investments in Querétaro in the near past, but mainly most of these investments are expansion investments. A lot of companies are relocating, and that's the objective of nearshoring, relocating processes in Europe, in the US, or in other parts of the country to existing facilities in Querétaro. And that's the way we are experiencing nearshoring. We are receiving new companies, obviously, American companies, Mexican companies, European companies, some Asian companies, but not as everybody's telling as the company from China is dismantling their facilities out there and then installing a new facility in Mexico. It's like an utopia. It's happening, but not as clearly as all this trend has been talking about. The nearshoring is about expanding capabilities in Mexico with existing companies. I have many examples of many companies in Querétaro and in Mexico as a whole that are expanding companies. So what are we doing? And I believe all my fellow secretaries are doing also, is to keep promoting, to keep giving certainty. At least we cannot. It's an issue that we understand that we cannot prevent raining. It will be raining maybe in some parts of this year or beginning of the next year. But what we can do is to take out the umbrella and the raincoat and prevent from our states whatever uncertainties are. That's why we are working in our own states. Those who are keen to nearshoring, to attract investments, to generate conditions that many more companies expand their operations or invest or receive new investments. So predictability to define it in some way, legal certainty, I insist on that. Supply development is an issue that we are promoting from our states to have enough internal market to provide these new processes or these new companies, because it will be useless that a company stalls in Querétaro, in Mexico, and they have to import their suppliers, their supplies. So the supply development it's an issue to take profit of nearshoring. Not only infrastructure, not only electricity, not only legal certainty, but if we don't have enough supplier base to supply these new processes, it will be useless to think about nearshoring because of the lack of supply chain.
Thank you, Secretary. One of the things that we are doing at BBVA is exactly that, as trying to connect SMEs in the value chains of companies that are coming to Mexico. We have a marketplace running at the time right now, and this is something really good for the companies. And you do have it in Querétaro, exactly.
We had a meeting in Querétaro 2 weeks ago with you, specifically.
So I think this is something that will help a lot and develop and help in developing those SMEs in Mexico. Anwar, the same question: how does nearshoring fit on your strategy for the next years?
Yeah. When we look at nearshoring, it's not only automotive and things like that. We look at it from a point of view, from an energy perspective. For example, one of the comparative advantages that Mexico has is the fact that it has low-cost gas that can be imported from the U.S., leveraging the pipeline infrastructure. So we see a lot of investment already going on the LNG market space, on the petrochemicals. For example, there is a new green methanol plant coming on, or at least it's in the final investment decision. Ammonia. So Mexico has a great opportunity to leverage that raw material, the gas, and do an LNG platform and export to the Asian countries and also petrochemical. So that's from that perspective. The other thing we look at is what the priorities that the current administration, as of yesterday or the day before yesterday, has outlined. And all the industries that the new president has outlined, it plays. Automation has a play. In 99, except tourism, but in all of them, we play. So we are very optimistic. Obviously, we have high expectations. There is a lot of uncertainty, but that's what we're here. We're locals, and we need to navigate through all those uncertainties.
Thank you, Anwar. We agree with you. At BBVA, this is going to be the greatest expansion in CapEx that we have done ever in Mexico. It's going to be in 2024. So we completely agree with you. This is time to bet for the Mexican economy, honestly. The same question, Adriana, nearshoring in your strategy for the future?
Sure. So this year we started really empowered by nearshoring, crafting our strategy for the long run, for the long term. As I said, we're a company that we're here for the next 30, 40, 60 years. And what we are looking at is we're very certain, two things that are going to always have an added value for the long run: real estate, art. We're not in the art business, we're in the real estate. So what we're doing is, and what we're seeing is, all the cities in Mexico and the States are always going to grow, and there's going to be more babies, of course, coming here to our Earth. And what we see is spaces are going to be starting to lack. What's going to be our strategy? We need to get those spaces already part of our portfolio, because prices of the land will continue to grow. So most of the developers, that's what we're seeing, that they already saw that's going to be the path for us to have our bank lands ready. And one of the things that, of course, it did shifted. Instead of having a very fast pace in terms of developing industrial parks, we're now doing it in a little bit slower manner in order for us to have these companies to come. One other thing regarding nearshoring, and I'm not trying to be like something that I know forever, but for example, in our region, this has happened for the last 40 years. So nearshoring is kind of not new for us. The new nearshoring era, where we see companies coming, and one of the things that we've seen as a trend is that not actual reshoring companies coming back to their company in our regions, but the suppliers. For example, we have Samsung as part of our ecosystem. So they requested most of the companies that they were doing most of the supplies back in China, Vietnam, et cetera, to come back to the region and establish their operations. And a couple of their clients are already ours. Other companies that, of course, that they were doing in other types of products and industries, they were also in Vietnam and in China. They decided last year to bring all of their operations mostly into Baja and Monterrey. So this is something that we're actually seeing. We thought that it was still just only a topic that was not actually executing, but now that we're on the pure ground and looking at these companies actually asking for spaces and negotiating with us, we see that this is going to be a trend to come. I mean, in all of the developers, as I said, buying bank lands, developing in our region. For example, Tijuana is one of the fastest growing markets in Mexico, along with Monterrey and Ciudad de Mexico. And 6 million square feet just in 1 year for the next year, that's something that gives you a heads up of the opportunity that we're also seeing.
Thank you, Adriana. Going back to you, Secretary, one question was, and this is a question out of the protocol, hopefully you can answer that. But what's the mood that you are facing right now with your peers? The mood in terms of investment, competitive advantages, infrastructure, water, and all that stuff between new governors and the new secretaries in the different governments that you are meeting with?
Well, the expectation is, well, the vision is of hope. We had a meeting with Secretary Ebrard on August 29th, and before he took office, and we saw a very clear vision of what he wants to do in terms of economic development, investment promotion, and the main issue that keeps giving us hope is that he committed with us to meet at least twice every 2 months. On October 14th, we will have a new meeting with him.
Every 2 months?
Every 2 months. We keep meeting with him. So on October 14th, we will have another meeting. In terms of the first meeting, we presented all the investment projects for Mexico that have arrived to our states in terms of project, or in terms of new investments, in terms of how do you say it? Ampliaciones, ¿cómo se dice? I forgot. Expansions. Sorry, expansions. Expansions. So, and what are the energy requirements, water requirements? How many jobs will those projects will generate to our country? and from that, he presented us a very clear strategy in terms of what the Ministry of Economy is looking forward to achieve through the states, because that one thing that we have learned is that the public policy or the economic policy right now was only at the level of policy in Mexico. What the states were responsible to do is to operate that policy, and that's a new trend in not just in Mexico, but in many economies, is that the subnational governments are responsible to operate the policies, the public policies regarding economy, regarding environment, regarding education, and so on. So he gave us a very clear proposition of how can we work together, because our main concern is that sometimes sometimes we don't have clarity, even us, we don't have clarity in terms of what are the new challenges for the next period of the next quarter, or even the next year. So to have as secretaries a full scope of what the federal government is going to do, and have a bilateral dialogue, it's very important for us. on the past administration, we didn't have that kind of rapport. So right now it's for us and for Querétaro, ourselves, and I can speak in behalf of my colleagues. We are looking this with hope, with the perspective, and looking forward to work together with the federal government in a very clear public policy that will be presented on the next two weeks.
Thank you, Secretary. Yeah, it looks like last year we were talking about the challenges for nearshoring, and we're saying infrastructure, energy, water, security. It looks like this is for real. This government is really very worried about this kind of things. And it looks like the infrastructure plan, the water plan, the energy plan, this is for real. This is going to happen at least in the next 6 years. And honestly, this is the kind of conversations that we at BBVA are having with the government. So it looks like this is going to happen, hopefully, soon. Jorge, going back to you, what should we do better in the next years? And put it in the context that we should renegotiate NAFTA in 2026. So between now and 2026, what should we do better in Mexico?
That's a very difficult question, and I'll tell you why. I think it's very difficult. One, because nobody, can predict what will happen, but also the USMCA is one of our key selling points when we try to differentiate Mexico from other competitors. And again, think India, think Southeast Asia, etc. I was in an event in the US at the Baker Institute, which is a think tank in Houston, a couple of weeks ago, and they had one VP of a very large US company. He was there, and he used to work in the government, the US government also. And he basically said, I don't think the US is going to ratify the USMCA. And obviously the room was silent, especially the Mexicans in the room, like myself. And then when the Canadian guest took the microphone, she said the same thing of the US. Like, I don't think the US is going to ratify it. Unfortunately, she said. And we all grew even silent and cold by now. And all this to say is that I walked out of that meeting, that event, feeling that for the US, this is not very important, or as important as it is for Mexico and Canada. And so, and just to be clear, maybe not everybody knows this, but just to be clear, in 2026, what they mean by, if it's ratified, you have another 16 years of the same. But if it's not, it doesn't mean it's over. It means that then every year, for the next 10 years, it has to go through this process again. And we still have an agreement, but you can imagine the uncertainty and the signal that this is sending, right? So it's a very unfortunate scenario. And so I think that going into 2026, Mexico has to understand that the reality of the situation. Like they say very colloquially in Spanish, no nos podemos poner los moños. We do have a lot going for us. It's an amazing country, don't get me wrong. But again, we're not alone. We're competing. The US is in that very specific mood, mindset, whatever you want to call it. And I think we have to go into the agreement very sober, very clear-headed, willing to negotiate some things that I think the US is going to want to negotiate. And so, and it's been said in other of these conversations yesterday, and I think it's going to be a theme today. But we do have to promote certainty, rule of law, and above all, and Minovi said it last night, he said, the US has to be sure that Mexico is an ally, not just the neighbor. because you're going to have a very bad relationship with your neighbors. Right? That doesn't mean you're going to be a good. We have to prove that we're an ally, and you can imagine what comes with that. You know, public statements, the way politics are handled, certainty, etc. And so, it's a very long answer to say that we have to put our feet on the ground and really be careful going into 2026, because the USMCA is such a valuable asset for Mexico that we don't want to ruin it just because we misread the power that we have going into those discussions.
Thank you, Jorge. I think everybody is freeze with your comment. Honestly, I don't think. I mean, I know the Berkeley Institute, and they are really good. It's a really good think tank. I don't think that would be a good possibility even for the U.S. if the NAFTA doesn't go out. What is going to happen for sure is an inflation in the U.S. That would be the first action that would happen. Just to put you in context, 51% of the fruit and vegetable in the U.S. comes from Mexico. 16% of the imports from in the U.S. come from Mexico. The correlation of the economies is almost 1 in the north of Mexico and the U.S. So I think decoupling, although it's freezing for Mexico, I don't think this is going to be something good even for the U.S. and Canada, honestly. But hope it doesn't happen. Last question for you all guys. In this context, Anwar, do you think it's really possible to decouple or not sign the renegotiation of the USMCA in 2026? Do you think that is possible? Is that a possibility?
Honestly, I don't think it will be possible. It will be changed. It will be a tough bargaining. There will have to be a negotiation, and there has to be a lot of communication. There is a lot of interest on both sides. We cannot ignore the fact that many states depend on Mexico. For example, all the gas that we get. I mean, I can't recall the amount in terms of imports. So Mexico and U.S. They are partnered, and they will have to negotiate. They will have to find a way to negotiate, and that's basically. I don't think it will be possible.
Adriana.
Same. I mean, at the end, everything has been so well crafted and as a net. It's very difficult to just cut the knots. The implications and what will happen to the three countries will be, I think, catastrophic. I just want to add up another proposal for what else we can do right or what else it's lacking. We need a promotion agency for Mexico. I mean, we cannot do this by ourselves. Every state is just going to trade shows and everywhere, and it's very difficult to have the same voice and talk about what we have right. I mean, every state are doing their great efforts and regions, but it's not the same. I think we need this professional agency to come again and help us spread the word of what we're doing right here in Mexico.
Some things that you would like to see Mexico doing better for the coming years.
Well, I insist at a subnational level, every state is doing the best they can with the tools they can do. I'm sure that Aguascalientes, Jalisco, Guanajuato, even those on the southeastern part of our country are looking forward to do their best jobs to attract investment and to generate jobs. What can we do better? And on behalf of what Adriana said, at AMSDE, at the Mexican Association of Economic Development Secretaries, we are trying to do that promotion agency. When ProMéxico was dismantled at 2019, And then came the pandemic, and when I took the office in the presidency of AMSDE at 2022, we set up a strategy of promoting our country as a whole. So we have been at a very discreet pace, but we have been participating in industrial fairs that are of common interest of our states. For instance, we went with to Hanover Fair with 16 states participate in the first time since ProMéxico was dismantled. And now in October, we will be participating at CIAL, a food and beverage trade show in Paris, and so on. So we will try for the next year to keep promoting our economy as a country, buying full pavilions and set up a Mexico pavilion that wasn't made prior. We have a arrangement with the exterior relationship ministry, with the economy ministry. We will be working, and that's the thing that we're trying to do at the subnational level. Maybe the federal policy is not very keen into promoting, into making an agency to promote, but we have 32 states that want to do the best to promote their economies, to generate jobs, to attract investment, and the only thing is to connect the dots, to set up in a single place, and to obviously collaborate with the industry, with the industrial developers, with the manufacturing industry, and to promote what Mexico has to make.
Completely agree. At the final end, building bridges, this is something key in Mexico. And honestly, this is something that is happening right now, that it didn't happen as much as we would like to happen in the last years. Right now it's happening, and that kind of meetings, you are meeting twice or every 2 months with the secretary, so this is a good thing.
So imagine this. I mean, when China entered the World Trade Organization, a lot of manufacturing was sent to China slowly, and then it started to grow and grow and grow. And a lot of companies, and just for this example, just think US companies, they lost total know-how of their manufacturing process. And we bump into this all the time. So when we talk to these companies and we say, okay, you don't want to do this in China anymore, we can do it in Mexico, give me the plans. I don't have them. Well, I want to talk to your engineers that know how to do this. They're gone. Oh my God, do we have to reverse engineer? I mean, that is, you cannot imagine how difficult that is with a lot and other concerns. And so a lot of this know-how is not even in the hands of these companies that want to reshore, nearshore, whatever we want to call it. And so when again in this scenario that I want you to imagine, they talk to the Chinese supplier and they say, you know what, I have to end this relationship because I have to find a supplier in Mexico. And the Chinese supplier is basically saying, wait, don't do that. I mean, we've been working for 15 years. We got the quality right, we got the price right. You know me, we know each other. I will go to Mexico. I will become Mexican if that's what it takes. Perfect. And so then you have these Chinese suppliers going to Mexico, arriving in Mexico, and say, okay. And they call us and they said, what do we have to do to make our product Mexican? Because that's what our client is asking. What do we have to do? And so that answer is also very long, but in a nutshell, it is about some rules of local content and local value, and we bring in lawyers, and we have to say, well, you have to bring this from Mexico, and you have to bring this. You can't bring everything from China and just stamp it, and then it's going to be Mexican. And so a lot of Chinese companies are undergoing that process. They're saying, okay, they're scrambling to make their products Mexico and comply with the formulas required by the USMCA. The problem is that the supply chain. even the Chinese are coming here and they say, okay, I need suppliers of A, B, and C in Mexico to make it Mexican. There aren't any. And you cannot develop them from one day to the next. And so they're saying, oh my God, what do we do? So even the Chinese companies I see are vertically integrating and starting to develop some of these expertise themselves in Mexico in order to be Mexican, which I think is very good, by the way. I think it's going to speed up this supplier development process in Mexico because the Chinese have mastered it for the past 15 to 20 years. So I think, if you ask me, I think all this influx of Chinese know-how in manufacturing, I think it's very positive because a lot of this is developing local suppliers. Whether it's Chinese-owned or Mexican-owned, I mean, that's indifferent, but the skill set is developing here. The third question, I see some very large Chinese-owned companies settle, like in Hofusan, north of Monterrey, and they're like blue chip companies, right? They know what they're getting into. They have resources, they have lawyers. It's like a European company, right? But then you have a lot of smaller Chinese companies, Chinese-owned companies, that do not have a clue what they're getting into. And I think that's risky. I mean, they even tell you like, hey, I'm ready to manufacture. Wait, you need a NYMEX. A what? A Kleenex? No, what? No, you need a NYMEX. That's a license. That's a permit. Okay, I'll get it. Yeah, it's going to take you like a year. What? So it's these conversations, and I can understand. I mean, if you have Mexican companies suddenly going to Thailand, I mean, you're not going to know anything about Thailand. And so I see a lot of companies coming like that. And so advisors in Mexico, they are trying to help Chinese companies to navigate the Mexican system. And you can imagine that it's been tough, because the rules are different, the way of working is different. So there is a very, very steep learning curve for a lot of these smaller Chinese companies. And I don't want to generalize, but probably just grouping these very small family-run Chinese companies, I don't see them being very used to paying fees. And I hear this from lawyers and accountants, and they're like, hey, I can help them, but they don't want to pay. They say my fees are too expensive, and so that it's a different way of doing business. And then the first one, I think it's across a lot of industries. I have seen it in equipment. You know how the supply chain goes, right? A lot of German-designed equipment is made in China, so a lot of the know-how for this equipment the equipment is actually done in China. And so, for example, motors are, like I see a lot of Chinese, like being imported into Mexico. I see a lot of electronics that are still being imported, and a lot of raw material. I mean, I know you're probably thinking of processes, but the raw material in China is more affordable, and so Chinese companies want to keep importing that, and it's not possible in many cases without paying a tariff. No? So I see it in probably across the board, I would say, but a lot in electrical equipment and electronics.
So I would like to ask to any of you five, what could be that component that we're missing of unity in order to actually execute many of the things that we're missing, and kind of all of us benefit from this nearshoring trend?
We had this conversation before, maybe 2 weeks ago, and looking at the past and what was done right, we have a leadership lack right now. So we need a head in order for us to have that unity actually going to happen. When, for example, we've seen most of the business sectors always having a head, but right now the voices of the business community are not as strong as before. Looking at transversally, and that's what we're trying to push from our side. Who's going to be the one responsible for having everyone united and actually doing things on the same path? So, I don't have the answer, if anyone has it, I mean, we're willing to cooperate and add on to that strategy.
I mean, very short addition to what you said, Adriana. My first thought was the federal government. I mean, probably there's a lot of hope in what I'm saying, but I think that would unite all these voices, because what you said really resonated with me. I think the states are doing an incredible job. But you go to a trade mission in Europe, and you see Nuevo León, Querétaro, and Baja California, and you see these companies saying like, "Where's the Mexico table?" No, and we're like, "There is no Mexico table," and they're like, "What? I mean, what do you? So who are these names?" They're like, "Well, they're states in Mexico." Long story short, I think the federal government should be the one united in having that single voice, but I don't see it happening.
Security is a huge issue. How do you see that? And I didn't hear anything in yesterday's inauguration by Claudia Sheinbaum regarding the security issue. How do you see that? One of you talked about having to move your companies from one state to the other. In Colombia, we're hearing the big entrepreneurs of avocado and of lime saying we need to move out of Mexico because we're up to here with the drug traffickers pushing us, controlling the business, etc. How do you see that going, and what can it be done, and how can you collaborate, and do you see collaboration in the future between U.S. and Mexico regarding that very, very big problem?
I would say yes. I mean, it's a risk. Of course, it's a risk. But let me give you one number. 80% of the batteries in the world are built in China, and the U.S. is buying those batteries as of today. So again, when we say decoupling from China, of course this is something that should be in the USMCA, and we are in Mexico taking care of the USMCA. So again, when we say decoupling and be careful with China, I would say, okay, everybody, if every country in the world does that, okay. But I don't think the U.S. decoupling everything from China, at least for the moment, because 80% of the batteries in the world are built in China, at least for the moment. No? The second one, I mean, of course, it's one of the key issues that we have in Mexico. Of course, this is more a political answer that I might throw. But again, I mean, we have to. I mean, everybody needs to be more in the table. We know very well the new Secretary of Defense and the new Secretary of Security. He's a really good guy. He knows very well what to do. I don't have more information to tell you about that. But yeah, it's an issue. It's an issue.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just add that. Starting from the political part, which is probably not my expertise, but the fact that we're based in the U.S. and we operate in Mexico, I think we can afford that dual vision. I do think that most Mexicans, we have been unable to really understand how important this China thing is for the U.S. I mean, they are very, very stuck on it. And they have really taken it, there's some things that Mexico has done towards China, by becoming very friendly towards China. I do think that the Americans, especially more on the right side of things in political language, they are very upset about it. So I don't know how this is going to affect the relationship. And I think it was talked about yesterday with more experts than myself on this issue. On the drug trafficking and in the safety issue, that's one of the benefits that the border has, and I see it when we talk to potential clients. They want their facilities to be located on the border, so they can, when they go to supervise, or they can send a manager from the U.S. The managerial team lives on the U.S. side, and just crosses like a lot of people cross every morning. and goes back and sleeps on the U.S. side, and their kids go to a U.S. school and U.S. medical care. And so that's one of the selling points of the border that I think the center of Mexico needs to struggle with, that the border does not, because sometimes, I mean, when clients say, well, where do you recommend that I set up? The first thing we say, let's look at your supply chain and your labor, right? And sometimes that place is El Bajío, for example, Querétaro. And one of the questions they say, well, I get it, but I hear that a lot of cargo is stolen. So I don't want to make that long trip to the Bajío. I want to be on the border because the trips are so short. And so you see the safety issue, how it is getting into these smaller companies' minds. So again, you started saying it's an elephant in the room. And I would say it probably is in my mind because nobody knows how to solve it and when it's going to be solved, and who's going to do it. There's so much uncertainty there that what I do see from our clients and even from ourselves is, I mean, this is a system right now we have to navigate through it, and it's going to be more costly, and it generates more uncertainty.
I would like to ask the Secretary of Querétaro that with regard to the following. Given the numerous resources that are needed in order to develop the infrastructure that we need in roads, railroads, ports, energy, water, etc., do you think that there will be greater interest and appetite for public-private partnerships? And will also state governments and the federal government be willing to give greater investment incentives to companies?
Yes, well, that's a big challenge that every state is facing in terms of not just infrastructure, roads, and not just energy. We know that transmission and energy transmission in the country, it's a huge challenge. That's what it's relenting the investment in manufacturing, because we don't have enough. We have enough energy, but we don't have the capability of transmitting. Water is an issue specifically in the central part of Mexico, maybe in the northern part, but more for as we can see it, for the citizens, not more for the industry, because at least in Querétaro we have a serious water problem, and we are focusing our efforts to supplying the water for the citizens rather than the industry. And with this shift in environmental policies that require less water, it's the obvious way to go that way. But the states the state's administration cannot do all this alone. For instance, Querétaro, we have the governor Curi has established four big priorities. One obviously is energy, and we created an energy agency that allows us to work hand by hand with the private sector and to develop infrastructure for transmitting energy. We have a huge project that will allow us to transmit more than 900 megawatts in the near future. It's going through these numerous steps of authorizations, but we are working on that. In terms of water, and that's working with the private companies. In terms of water, we are developing a public-private association project that will recycle all the water, all the wastewater in the metropolitan area of Querétaro. That it's Querétaro, Corregidora, El Marqués, and Huimilpan. Those are the four municipalities that form the metro area that recycle all these wastewater and return it to usage. That's the way to do, because we cannot extract more water. We could do it, but it's very expensive. So that's the way we are, and we're working with the federal government also, so they can authorize that. In terms of infrastructure, we will launch a freeway, a concessed freeway from San Juan del Río to Querétaro to avoid the 57 highway that is full of traffic, and will be a public-private participation also. That could be the way if the federal participations to the states are lowering. Querétaro received these past 3 years not even 10% of what we have received 10 years before in terms of federal participation. There are two schemes. We receive what the coordination agreement, the fiscal coordination agreement, allows us to receive, and we have been receiving that, but it goes mainly to the overhead. But for special projects, that money that was for roads, for hospitals, for schools, for many other projects that were specifically for the state, we have been not receiving that money in the past 6 years. So to be creative, we have to associate with public-private entities. The state will allow or propose those partnerships, and that would be the only way to develop infrastructure and to develop capabilities in terms of these topics.
Good morning, everyone. Do you view the constitutional amendment to the judiciary as a potential threat to the USMCA and to nearshoring? Thank you.
Well, I'll take a stab at it first, hoping that I'm backed up here. I think there is a lot of wait and see attitude right now, both from an ignorance point of view, and I'm including myself in there. Like, I don't really understand yet the exact concrete implications that this reform will bring to the private sector. And also, there is a lot of uncertainty from a lot of knowledge, because if you look back at different sexenios in Mexico, we don't really know at the beginning what's going to happen, right? It's a big coin toss. And so everybody at the beginning of each sexenio is like saying, well, how are these guys going to do things, right? Let's wait and see. So I'm not sure, but it's definitely bringing noise into the room. And we had declarations of the US and Canada, and so there's definitely going to be a lot of questions towards the USMCA ratification next year.
I'll piggyback with you. We did a poll along with our clients, asking them, what do you see? Did the elections affect the judicial reform effect? And they said, no, we've been planning for the last 3 years in terms of our growth. And then we just made our renewals in terms of strategy for growth. So we've navigated Mexico for many years, and we just, as you said, we're waiting to see, but this is not going to make us leave. We're just, probably it's going to make adjustments in terms of growth, but not something catastrophic as just leaving the country.
And if I may, if you review the USMCA document, it's not contrary, the constitutional reform, to the USMCA document as itself. What is contrary or could put on risk the negotiation is the free trade, the rules of the free trade. Some experts analyze that with this model of judicial system could put risk on the free trade agreement, of the free trade, not agreement by itself, but the free trade operation between the three countries. So this constitutional reform is not violating the USMCA agreement. It's very important to say so. the aftermath is what's concerning. As everybody has said on the table, implementation of the constitutional reform is a big challenge and the big question mark in the near future. We were talking prior to this to come here, just to elect, as the Constitution is establishing, all the judges and these judicial officers. We should not have time to elect them in a one day period, as the Constitution says. To state you could participate up to almost 10% of the list of the voters list could participate on a one day period. So that's the big challenge on the implementation: secondary laws, regulatory laws, and the procedure of how these members will be elected. So that's what everybody's waiting. Are waiting in terms of how it will be implemented. So we are as I said before, we are hopeful that this implementation should be friendly for everybody.
Okay, so well, thank you very much to the panelists. Thank you very much for the audience. It has been a really good conversation.